Have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's the way I'm making my podcast right now. And it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And Anchor is going to distribute your podcast to all the major important places you would ever want, like Spotify and Apple and so many more places. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. I love it. It's so simple. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Intuitive Psychologist Podcast. I'm Lindsay Pandya, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist who's been in the mental health field for over 15 years. I am so grateful to be part of the mental health field, especially since in this day and age, mental health is really coming online as to how important it is to not only have it, but to have the conversations and normalize what many of us all go through. We all, from time to time, and sometimes for far too long, struggle with our mental health. The one piece, though, about mental health that I feel is missing so much is the conversation around spirituality and how important it can be to be tapped into the spiritual side of you to help with your mental health. Thankfully, I feel like in this current climate, people are having a spiritual awakening at an ever-increasing rate, which can be jarring and scary and confusing, and you may even think that you're losing your mind a bit. So my intention with this podcast is to bridge the gap between spirituality and mental health, and I want to bridge the gap through normalizing not only mental illness, mental health issues, but to also normalize typical spiritual awakening symptoms, give you some guidance as to how to manage a spiritual awakening. I bring on guests to help talk about different modalities to connect you in to your spiritual nature. And I want to do all of this with the intention to help you grow and to know that you are not alone and that there's help out there for you. So please join me on this journey through my own self-discovery with mental health problems, with challenging life events, and going through my spiritual awakening and continued spiritual growth. Join me and my friends as we have these interesting and sometimes very difficult conversations, not only about mental health, but also about a spiritual journey. So welcome, friends, and enjoy. Welcome back, my friends, and so sorry for the delay. I know that last week I skipped, and I really apologize about that. It's been an intense couple of weeks. I don't know if y'all have been feeling it as well, but there has been a lot of energy, not only with, say, the American politics and elections, but also with Scorpio season and everything else that's been going on. And so sadly, I had to take a week off because I was physically exhausted. I've been sleeping a lot. I have been just trying to do a lot of self-care in my downtime. And I hope that you all are too. If you went through that or ever go through that in the future where you just have a week or two or maybe even longer where things just feel exhausting or overwhelming, that you just listen to your body and don't judge it and just go with it. Please, I ask of you. And I think that in this new era, we really need to pay attention to our feelings and pay attention to our needs and go with it. So I'm so sorry for anyone that was patiently waiting for a week for my podcast. Okay, I was going to say something really degrading about myself, but I'm going to choose not to. There we go. I'm going to choose to try to speak kinder to myself. I know that for me, it was funny. There were a few weeks leading up to this that I noticed a lot of the spiritual leaders that I follow, like all of a sudden went MIA. And I was like, oh shit, they're going through some stuff. Isn't that interesting? Trust me, I hadn't gone through anything yet. I guess I was just on the cusp of it. And I was like, oh, okay. So if so many people are like tapping out for a few weeks and just being like no podcast, no content, I was like, okay, well, they must be going through something. It is Scorpio season. I totally get it. And I had to find other ways to fill my time where I normally would have filled them with interesting podcasts. Then it hit me. And I was like, okay, so I guess I'm going through it too. So my guess is a lot of people have gone through it. We had here in America so much craziness with the elections and not knowing for Tuesday, Wednesday, I think it was called Saturday morning. And my anticipation is that this will not be a slow and easy transition of power in the next couple of months. So today's episode, I really want to talk about anger. And this may sound weird, but anger is our best friend. All of our emotions are our best friend. They're here to guide us and give us information, and what we do with it is what can be destructive. So I think that with our political system here in America, anger has been stirred up so deeply on both sides, and we have been divided, and we have been encouraged to hate one another. And with hate, there is anger behind that because people are being hurt, and they're pointing a finger outside saying, you have hurt me. And maybe that's why today this topic seemed appropriate. Because if we are truly changing the people in power in the United States in the next couple of months, and I think that this is a global concept, is we need to start loving one another. Even if we're on opposite sides, even if people have hurt us. In all of our history on this planet, when we have fought amongst each other, when we have had wars against one another, they've never been solved through hate. They have always only been solved through love. That doesn't mean that we say it's okay for people to harm us. That doesn't mean that we have no backbone and don't stick up for ourselves. But we must love one another deeply. And we can disagree and still love. I've been feeling a strong calling for the last couple of weeks, if not longer, about this message of love. But I also believe that to be able to get to love, we must understand our anger so that we can move out of hate and truly, truly love those that we define as our enemies. It's easy to love those that we agree with, have the same mindset, the same purpose, the same education, the same background, all this, ... Easy to do. What is not easy, what we must do, especially now, everybody, especially now, we must love those that have harmed us, that we perceive as enemies, that we perceive as the other. We must love them. We must show everyone compassion. Doesn't mean we have to like them. You don't have to like them. But simply send them away with love. one of the things that my shaman has taught, which I like and I try to use, is when somebody harms us and we have nothing nice to say, simply in your head, just wish them well, or wish them healing, or wish them kindness or something, just that. That's it. You don't have to like them. You don't have to think that they're great. And so for the folks that have hurt me or continuously hurt me, or as I'm face to face with them are saying things that are hurtful, instead of me cursing them, talking ill of them, which I do still anyway, I'm human, but then I try to go, okay. But send them away with love. So anger is our friend. Anger is just an emotion trying to tell us something important is going on. And I personally see anger in two ways. Anger is telling us that a need is not being met. And anger is telling us that we are feeling powerless in this situation, or in life, or with this person. So imagine the times when you have gotten angry. And I think what's important to do is to sort of backtrack. So I think about how I help people with anger management issues. And really what that means is that what we do with our anger can be harmful. And so we need to manage that. Not that we need to get rid of it. I think that's a load of crap. And I think that it's not plausible, you can't do it. But B, it's just, you're getting rid of like a piece of your dashboard that tells you your oil is low. Like, why would you do that? Your car's going to fucking blow up. And if you have ever, not address your anger, you will fucking blow up. So, and trust me, folks, I have had my plenty of blow-ups. There was one time I was very angry at my mom as a little girl. I know that I felt very powerless in my home. And I don't know what had happened, but my guess is something to the effect of, and I don't know if these two are related or if they just happen in the same physical space, so I'm associating the two, but something like she told me to vacuum the house, and so I vacuumed it, and then she said I didn't vacuum it correctly, and then we got into an argument, and I shoved her against the wall, and I felt really bad. But in hindsight, I felt powerless. I didn't do it right. I thought I had done it the best that I could. And I was being told that I didn't do it right, and I didn't understand why that was not right. Vacuuming a fucking house. I think part of me too was like, it's a fucking house. It's the carpet. Who cares? Like, it's not that big of a deal. But anyway, maybe she was having a bad day. My guess, though, actually it's not a guess. I know that what was going on was days, weeks, months, and years of feeling powerless in a home with a father who had continuously taken our power away. And when he got angry, he would get violent. And not in the typical violent, like he didn't beat my mother. Wow. I was about to say something that I usually find humorous but not funny, is that a lot of people that are in abusive situations like minimize things, and it's not funny that they're minimizing it, but it's like, wow, we really are in so much denial that something was abusive that we go, yeah, but, right? Or it wasn't quite like this. And I was literally going to do this just now, but I'm going to out myself. I was about to say, well, yeah, but he never hit us. But he choked my sister. I remember that. She was 18 in our house, and it was right around her graduation, and they were fighting about something yet again, because those two were always fighting. And my sister said, fuck you, to him. And in front of my mom and myself, he choked her. And I was in like 7th or 8th grade. And he choked her. And I can't remember for how long, but it was scary. He choked her right up against the wall. So yeah, that was the kind of environment that I was in. He had never hit us beyond that, but that was enough, right? One time should be enough, that's not okay. And if you've heard my other episodes, you'll know that there were a lot of other things going on, but I'm very sensitive to energy and I can feel so much going on. So the injustice of that household was deep. So my feelings of powerless were deep. I had no voice. I couldn't speak out, right? As a girl, right? So this is the interesting thing, and I apologize if I've spoken about this because, sometimes as a therapist, I say a lot of the same things over and over again to different people because they apply. And so I kind of sometimes forget. I'd have to ask my clients, like, have we talked about this before? And they're like, no or yes. And I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't remember. But anyway, so I apologize if I've said this before. But in our society, in Western societies, there's this socialization of men and little boys and little girls. And so in our Western society, little girls are raised that we're not allowed to be angry. We're allowed to be sad and depressed. That's fine. But we're not allowed to be angry. If you're angry, you're a bitch. You're controlling, you're manipulative. You're horrible. You're a bad person. You're mean, you're nasty. You're all these terrible things that we're told. And so for many little girls, we end up suppressing our emotions. For boys, on the other hand, they are socialized to get angry. Like that is like, yeah, you're strong, you're powerful, you're a badass if you get angry and you punch people and you yell and you scream and then you're fine. And there is a little bit of good piece to that of like getting it out and then moving forward. But the problem is that boys are socialized to not be sad. And you boys are. We all have all these feelings. And so it's created a lot of social issues because we have told little boys that they're weak, they're pussies, they're little girls if they cry or if they get sad. And really it's kind of on a similar spectrum, sadness and anger. Sadness is directed inwards towards yourself. I'm not good enough. The world hates me. There's something wrong with me. Whereas anger is really directed outwards in a lot of ways. Fuck the world, right? The world is trying to fuck me over as opposed to the world doesn't like me. So-and-so caused me pain. It's their fault. So that's just an interesting little piece. There's something else I was going to say. I'll probably remember it in the middle of another thought and lose it again about socialization and suppression. Oh, yes, thank you. So there's also an interesting psychological phenomena that we tend to have one dominant emotion that we go to often and then one dominant emotion that we completely suppress. And so if we take traditional standard, Western societies, that could be it, right? Boys suppress their sadness and girls suppress their anger. But ask yourself, like, what is the one emotion that's either really, really hard to connect to or you have like no access to, or you're like, oh no, I don't get such and such. And for a lot of people, it could be that anxiety is their main go-to emotion, that they feel worried. Maybe they have worried parents. Maybe they think too much about possibilities of the future collapsing, but they can't access their joy because joy was in the household deemed inappropriate or boastful or too big of an energy. Like, who knows? But ask yourself, which of the main 5 emotions do I either have a hard time accessing or don't even have the capability? And for me, the longest time, it was anger and rage. And rage can be so beautiful when it is directed in the right way. So again, today we talk about anger. And not only anger for women or feminine energies, because I honor and respect the fact that all people born biologically female may not inhibit mostly female energy. There's very straight females that mostly identify with the masculine, push, achievement energy, type A kind of energy. And there are plenty of naturally or biological males that identify very much with feminine energy of flow and receiving and that kind of thing. And there's also all of the spectrum of sexuality and gender identification. So I just want to honor that. When I say feminine energy, I'm not talking specifically about women. The socialization I was, right? Because that is a thing that society has done to biological creatures, biological humans. But when it comes to energies, it's different. And so when I say energy, it's that feminine energy. We inhabit one of those two, both masculine and feminine energy, and they come into play at different parts of our day, our life, and usually we have one that's a little bit more dominant than the other. There are times where I feel very masculine. I feel very much of that push energy, and most of the time, for me at least, I feel very feminine. Now I've tapped more into my femininity because I've realized that I socialized myself out of femininity, thinking that it was cooler for me to fit in with the boys, and not flaunting my sexuality and not even really liking my body. But as I've liked my body, I've touched more into my femininity. Anyway, I got off subject for a minute. I'm so sorry. My husband's always like, you need to stay on topic. I know. Sorry, hon. I didn't stay on topic yet again. So getting back to anger, I think about how do I help my clients with anger? What do I do to guide them through either tapping into the anger that they've suppressed or to tap into the anger that they express in harmful ways. I've worked in max security prison for 5.5 years. So you can imagine with the rapists and murderers and all the other things in between of the crimes that I've worked with, not that I did them, but that the inmates had done, and we tried to do anger management with them. And part of my goal, and most times, was how do I help somebody not stab their cellmate because they were sick and tired of having the cellie. And he's like, well, that's what I do. I just stab them and then they go. And I'm like, right, that is one way to handle that. Probably not the best way. But, even in my private practice, I deal with a lot of anger issues, in that many feminine energies come in with like it comes out sideways, and they're like, I don't understand why I do this. And I'm like, oh, because you don't think you can get angry, and you don't know how to get angry where you feel safe. And for men that have maybe, used their anger and have hurt people, right? They feel that guilt and shame, and they are like, well, I'm just, an evil person, and I need to be punished, and I'm just wrong and bad, and I'll never change. And it's like, no, you just used your anger and didn't know how to do it properly. And that's fine. So we'll talk about that. So when it comes to your anger, again, tap in right now for a moment, and I'm going to take a moment of silence for you to tap into your anger and do like a little mini assessment. What does your anger look like when you express it? How does it feel in your body? Do you feel in control when you're angry? Do you feel like you need work in this area? Either tapping in or changing the way that you interact with it? Good. So the first thing that I have people do is think back and do this with me if you can, because this might be a fun little experiment and it might help. And maybe you don't need to see a therapist after this, but maybe you do. I don't know. Anyway, so first thing is I want you to imagine what age you can place yourself when you feel like either anger got out of control or anger was pushed away. Maybe you don't have a specific age, maybe a specific time. And for some of you that have had very chaotic, painful childhoods, maybe you can't even tap into that, and that's fine. Maybe ask yourself, what did anger look like in my family? Did people get angry? And if so, how? How did that make you feel as a little child? Were you scared? Because sometimes when we get scared by adults getting angry, we say, oh, I can't feel that. So maybe it wasn't a socialized thing. Maybe it was that you saw adults become very scary when they got angry, and you wanted nothing to do with that. Because oftentimes in families, especially ones that are quite chaotic or traumatic or painful, we will do one of two things. We will either become just like it, unconsciously, and not realize, like, oops, we became exactly what we didn't like about our parents. Or we can go the complete opposite way and say, I will never be like that. And yet now you have just gone the opposite direction, and that will cause issues too. Okay. So now that we've done this thought experiment about trying to locate a time in your life when you feel like anger either got out of control or anger got pushed away. And I want to ask you, why? Why do you think this happened? What do you think was going on that made this reaction occur? For many people that I work with, like I said, one reaction is I saw people get angry and it was scary, so I wanted nothing to do with it. Okay, I get that. For others, they were ignored, they were belittled, they were made small, they were shut out. They were not seen, they were not heard. So when they said, hey, something's wrong, maybe their parents said, you don't know what you're talking about. That's wrong. You're looking at this the wrong way. Maybe when they said, hey, I did this really cool art project for you, I'm so excited. And they said, oh, I don't have time for this, right? No, I'm not talking like one or two times. I'm talking consistently over and over and over again. Well, guess what? When you're a child that isn't heard, right, you're going to try all these different ways to be heard and seen. So maybe you raise your voice a little bit and you're still ignored. Maybe you throw a temper tantrum and now you're smacked. You're hit and told, shut up. Stop doing that. You're being suppressed again. Maybe you amp it up a little bit and now you start yelling and screaming and punching people. And now they're like, oh shit, what's going on with Johnny? Now we give him attention. Now we, and I'm not talking positive attention, folks. I'm talking, you get yelled at back. Maybe you get spoken to. Who knows? But now they're paying attention to you. And if this consistently happens over and over and over again, where if you act out in a specific way because people aren't listening and they're not seeing you and they're not respecting you and they're making you feel powerless, now you've got your power. Now people are fucking listening to you. And guess what? if that is what is rewarded when you're a child, that you are what's called negatively reinforced. So there's something undesirable, but it gets the attention, then you're going to keep doing that. And if that keeps going on throughout your childhood, it's going to go in through your adulthood too. And now you've got real consequences. Add a little drinking in there or some drugs, and maybe it gets violent. Or if, you have a really hard day and your partner then, does something just like your parents and it makes you snap because you haven't been handling it, boom, there you go. So, that is the first piece. Now that you're an adult, though, let's look at some ways that you can manage this as an adult. I also want to just say briefly that inner child work with either a therapist or a coach is really good. And that is where you go into this period of time in your life and you look at it, you talk to that inner child, you rewrite the narrative, you give that child the support and love that it needed at that time. That is very powerful healing work. But my personal opinion, and it's probably biased because I'm freaking a therapist and a spiritual coach, but I think that it's better with a person because some real deep, intense stuff can come up and you need to have somebody to help you there to work through it. So don't just go, again, my personal opinion is don't just go into inner child work by yourself and be like, cool, I got this. Because some traumatic experiences can come up and you want somebody to be able to navigate that with you if you need it. So now you're an adult. What do? Right? You either don't have any way to access it because maybe as a child let's go and do that real quick let's look at if you were a child who suppressed your anger and it went away. So let's look at that because we looked at the one where if you act out, then you get your needs met. So maybe you were sexually assaulted, maybe even molested by a family member or a friend or a neighbor or an uncle or what have you. And so if you were molested, that alone can make your voice go away because there's so much guilt and shame. We hold authority figures, people that are older than us in our family, that kind of thing. We hold them in a phase of authority. And so we think that if they do something that feels uncomfortable or bad to us as little children, we assume that we're wrong and that we are misinterpreting something or that we asked for it or what have you. So there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes up and just inevitable, sadly, with sexual assault. Most people choose not to talk for quite some time. And so that alone can make you suppress your anger because that person has taken away your power, even if it was done once. And then think about those that got repeatedly molested or molested by multiple people over and over again, or physically abused or emotionally abused. Those folks that learn, I can't have anger because it's going to cause me harm, more harm. Think about that. If you're a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old child, right, and you've got a 30, 40, 50-year-old big person on top of you or, coercing you and making you feel small and talking, because a lot of times they talk shit to you too. It's not just sex and then gone. They usually have some what's called grooming, where they get you to trust them and then they take advantage of you and then they do a mind fuck gaslighting shit. So all of that takes your power away and you're not allowed to be angry because if you do, good luck, right? So you just pack it away and go, okay, that's just not a piece of me anymore. So that's important to know, is that alone can just completely get you out of touch with your anger and make it go away, because you feel like your life could be threatened if you get angry, and it could have been, and maybe it was. So for that person, let's just say that it's not that kind of scenario that's that extreme, but you've learned that when you were a small person, that if you got angry and upset and like maybe threw a toy or like stomped around, and then you got shamed for that, told that that's not what you do as a little girl, then you're going to suppress it. Or if you've tried to speak your mind and nobody will listen, you could amp it up, or you could ramp it down and just say, okay, what's the point? They're not going to listen. Or if I try to, it just hurts more, so I'm just going to suppress my voice deeper. That's what I did. I know what's funny is I was kind of I was opinionated. I wasn't a loudmouth, but I was opinionated about certain topics I was very passionate about. Like when my grandmother said some derogatory comment about Japanese people, and I think I was like somewhere between 4 and 6, and I was like, Grandma, that's racist. You can't say that. And, when my parents got upset that my sister had a black guy as a friend, and who knows, maybe she was dating him, but it didn't matter. They were like, what would people think if they saw you? And I was like, fuck those people. They're stupid if they're going to be fucking pissed that, a white person and a black person are in the same location. Like, ooh. Anyway, so I don't remember what the reactions were to that, but I just know that I know that I don't have a lot of memories about my childhood. I know that I was very scared as a child, so I probably was the kind of child that just realized, like, if I speak up and say something's wrong, or if I don't like something, or I have an opinion, it was ignored. I felt very overall ignored in my childhood. I think I've told you all that my sister and I are 5 years apart, so it was hard to really create a bond together. She was going through a lot. My dad was very critical and harsh, and I think my mom was doing the best she could to handle all of that, and it was tough. And so I just spent a lot of time alone and just realized, like, it's just better for me to just not say anything, because when I do say something, it just gets worse. So I just wouldn't. So that was kind of the boat that I was in, was like anger is scary. I'm not allowed to be angry. And as I speak up, bad things happen. So you just don't. So anyway. So now getting back to what to do when you're an adult. And one thing is start to ask yourself, what does your body feel like? And maybe this is something where you pull out a piece of paper and a pen, or you pull out your phone and start making notes, because these, I think, can be some things that can really be helpful. These are things that I talk about with my clients. So if you need to pause and go grab a pen and paper, go for it. Anyway, so ask yourself, when I feel angry, how does my body feel? Is it like a pit in my stomach? Is it my heart is beating like 10 times faster than it normally would? Does my face get red? Does my body feel hot? Do I feel pain in a certain spot of my body? Do I get a headache? So ask yourself that, because these are early warning signs that you're starting to get angry. And when we notice when we get angry, then we can do something different. And even for those that don't express their anger, you're still going to feel it. I mean, the anger is still there. You just don't do shit with it. You just are like, yeah, I'm going to go, whatever. Maybe you go drink. Maybe you go do drugs. Maybe there's a different vice that you get it out a different way. Maybe you stuff it and stuff it and stuff it with food, maybe. Maybe you stuff it, and then once in a blue moon, you just explode on somebody and then feel the guilt and shame, and then, it starts right back over again. So identify where in your body you start to feel sensations so that you can identify. Now ask yourself, what are some thoughts that come up for me when I get angry? what are some themes to when I get angry? Do I get angry when I feel like people are talking down to me, kind of telling me that I'm stupid? Do I get angry when people violate boundaries that I've set up? Like, hey, I need to take a few days off of work, right? And you've expressed this to your boss and you say, boss, I'm not feeling well. I have to take 2 days off. And they go, okay, cool. And then they still email you while you're sick, or they call you for an emergency and you're like, motherfucker, right? Or let's say your partner who loves you to pieces might talk to you in a tone that sounds condescending, right? And condescending kind of means, well, you think I'm stupid, right? And so if you get triggered by feeling like people think you're stupid, or you think that, oh, I could be stupid, or maybe I'm not that smart, then that might be the trigger to your anger. So know what triggers my anger. What is it that I think people are saying or doing, or how do I interpret people's actions and words towards me? Because that's another good clue in advance as to when you're going to get angry. So what thoughts come into my head? What are my triggers usually for getting angry? And then see, what do I normally do when I get angry? So let's talk about some ways to release anger in a healthy way. One thing that you can do to release anger is to exercise, maybe punch a punching bag, or when COVID is over and you can take classes again, you take a kickboxing class or a self-defense class, some sort of exercise where you can kind of imagine the person that you're mad at and take it out on that in a healthy way. No injuries, folks. I've definitely heard plenty of people that exercise in excess and causes them injuries, and that's not healthy either. So again, everything should be healthy. Do you live in a place where you could scream and nobody's going to call 911 thinking that you're being murdered? I had a really good spiritual person work with me on some sacred rage, and she said, what I want you to do is to go and scream and stomp your feet into the ground as if you're imagining the anger and aggression coming from your body and going into the earth. And she's like, and I want you to stomp like there's no tomorrow. Put all your energy into stomping and screaming at the exact same time. And I was like, well, I luckily live in a house, but I do have a close enough neighbor that they're probably going to think that I'm being murdered by my husband. So what I did instead was I found some classic rock music, turned it up as loud as I could. And I was like, I'd rather them think I'm having a party for 10 minutes than for them to call the cops. So that's what I did, is I turned the music up really loud because I figured, they're probably going to be screaming in these songs, so it's going to kind of cover up my screaming. And I did that. And while it hurt my voice, it was really cathartic and helped me to release a lot of my anger and rage that I have built up from a lot of fucked up shit that you all kind of know about. So that was really helpful. But let's say you live in an apartment or you live with family and you can't just do screaming, say, into a pillow. Get in your car, if you have one, and drive to somewhere that's private and remote. Park your car and scream your fucking head off. And if you need to speak it out loud and say what you're pissed about, then speak that and scream that too. Write a letter to who you're pissed at and tear it up. Do some ceremony with it where you burn it or you bury it or you do something ceremoniously to get rid of it. Do not send this letter to anyone. This is just your letter. You can jump up and down, do jumping jacks. I really like shaking it out like a dog. So dogs, one of the ways that they release energy is by shaking. And I'm sure we've all seen dogs shake it out. So they like shake their body very fast, and that gets out all that energy for them. So I kind of look ridiculous, but I might jump around and just like flail my arms around and move my head and, just like literally shake my body and jump. And that helps to move that energy out, because we cannot keep that anger trapped inside of our body. It's really important. And then finally, talk about it or talk to somebody. Ideally, I would like you all to be able to talk to the person that you feel has slighted you to get that power back. But if you can't, or you don't feel safe to do that, then I definitely suggest getting a therapist or a coach so that you guys can work through what's going on. Because the most important thing is, like, it's great to be able to get your feelings out by doing physical activity, because you can't keep that shit trapped in. But your anger is just going to keep coming back up if you don't actually do something different with it. So that's the next piece that I want to talk about. And I think, I need to take a little break, and then I'll be right back, and we will talk about how to actually address the anger so that you don't feel powerless anymore. All right, folks, see you in a few. Alrighty, I'm back. And so here is the conclusion of anger. And I just want to reiterate that really anger is a lot about feeling powerless in situations and with people. And I want to highly recommend the book called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. It is an excellent book. You can get it on Audible, or you can buy the actual book. And he may have actual courses and stuff that you could take and get a deeper practice on nonviolent communication. To me, the title was a little misleading, because I was like, well, nonviolent communication, I'm not violent. Why do I need to know nonviolent communication? But then when I read the book, I realized that I actually utilize almost everything that he's taught. And so he's a psychologist and came up with this way of communicating on his own a long time ago. So I realized that is actually just the way that I talk, and I teach my clients to talk. And I've taught my husband, and I've tried on numerous boyfriends in the past that didn't work. But it's great. It's got 4 main steps. And one of the things that I really like about this is that it makes you take ownership of your own feelings. You are not saying that somebody else is making you mad. You are also, it helps to kind of put some compassion and understanding on the other person's part, which I always helps in conversations. So I think that if you guys are interested in the book, it would be really good. And I think that this can help maybe bridge the gap a little bit with the folks, like I said in the beginning of this episode, that maybe you feel like are your enemy or your rival, or somebody that has harmed you and hurt you. I think that there's a piece, the other piece that I like about this is it really gives you information. If you utilize this approach effectively and somebody doesn't want to participate, it gives you information, and you could walk away with confidence to say, okay, I literally tried to talk to them effectively, and if they are still a douche canoe to you, then that lets you know where they stand and how they feel about you, and how they are willing to either change or look at themselves or to understand where you're coming from. And so it gives you information to make decisions. Some people just need to kind of be removed or put at a distance, and some people, you just need to really try to communicate differently, and there's a world of change that can happen. When it comes to relationships, I've also seen a lot of people that learn this way of communicating. They start communicating to their partner using nonviolent communication, and the other partner doesn't need to learn it per se, but just because they are practicing it, it kind of helps change the relationship dynamic for many people, for many couples. So another thing to think about. So I highly recommend the book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And now I'm going to go over the 4 key pillars of nonviolent communication. Remember too that when it comes to nonviolent communication, you're not expected to get this down perfect. It takes practice. The more you practice, the less robotic or therapeutic it's going to feel. I don't know if my husband would say that when I use this way of communicating, especially in difficult times, that I sound super therapist-y, but I might. I don't know. It's very possible. But it's going to kind of sound a little stale as I say it. It may come across very stale as you try to utilize it. But the more comfortable you become, the more it's going to be a conversation than it's going to be, well, step 1 is this, step 2 is that, step 3 is this, and step 4 is that. Oh shit, that didn't work. What do I do now? Don't worry. Just try to do the best you can. If you read the book, it's going to have a lot more information for you. And I think he's got workshops or classes. So if you really feel like you need to take this to the next level, you can always do that. So this is just a really rough, dirty kind of way of going through this. So number 1 is to observe what's going on without judgment. So don't judge yourself and don't judge the other person. And you can start by thinking this in your head, but the important piece is that it's spoken out loud at first. And I'll go over a couple examples so that it kind of brings this to life. Number 2 is name the feeling. So you have to be in touch with what you're feeling so that you can actually name it out loud. And the most simple, basic thing is it one of the 5 main emotions? So it's happiness, worry or stress, sadness, anger, and then boredom or neutrality. So if that's all you can get to, and that's the only thing you can name, then go with that. And if you can name it to a deeper, more intense level, because each emotion has a lot more branches of emotions, then that's obviously better because the person's going to have a better understanding as to what's going on. A key for naming the feeling. A lot of times we accidentally say what we're thinking and not what we're feeling. So I think one of the best ways to know whether or not what you're quote unquote feeling is to ask yourself, can you replace what you're feeling in the sentence that says, I think I am, and then whatever the quote unquote feeling is. So, no, I'm sorry. It's I think and then the feeling. So if it's sad, I think sad doesn't make any sense. I think you're a piece of shit. The feeling's not you're a piece of shit. That's your interpretation of the person's behavior. If it's upset, I think upset doesn't make any sense. If it's you're doing me wrong, I think you're doing me wrong. No. What's the feeling behind being done wrong? Does that make you angry? Probably. Does it make you sad? Maybe. Maybe it stresses you out. So try to play with that for a little bit. I think that might even be the first key if this is a really tough thing for you, is to even tap into your feelings, because as a society, we aren't in touch with our feelings at all. So no shame in that motherfucking game. So maybe start with, throughout the day, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And then replace it with I think, and then whatever you think is the feeling, and then see if that's a feeling or not. Okay. So the second piece is name the feeling, and that would be out loud after you've figured it out internally. Number 3 is clearly state the need. What is the need that's not being met in that moment? Number 4 is request a specific action. So what would you like to happen as a result of this conversation? Okay, so let's use some examples. So I had a family member who my husband and I have been trying to get flown out for Christmas for years. And this person finally said, yep, I'm going to do it. And I had had a couple of Christmases that were pretty sad for them, and we were like, please come out and be with us for Christmas. You never have, and we would just love for you to be with us. And so, they had been hurt the Christmas before, and they were very upset, and so they said yes, that they would come. So it was a year away, and the first couple of months they were excited. They couldn't wait. They were talking about taking time off and booking flights and all that fun stuff. And then it was like, I don't know, maybe 6 months to it. And then all of a sudden they start going, well, I don't know. And we're like, but why? We're going to pay for the tickets. Like, we'll arrange people to like take you there. It's all you have to do is show up. And then a few months beforehand, we were actually getting on a phone call to buy the tickets for this person. And they were just like, yeah, no, I'm not coming. And the reason why didn't really make sense, because the reason given, pretty much they said that they were afraid to fly. But my struggle with that was, you've flown numerous times before, why all of a sudden now, a few months beforehand, you are afraid to fly? And they're saying like, oh, it's all this horrible stuff. Like the months leading up, I'm just miserable waiting for these flights, and I just hate every part about it. And they just were like, I'm not coming. And the sad thing was, this family member was going to have another Christmas alone, and we really didn't want that. And so it was very hurtful to hear that this person wasn't going to come out, and it was hard for me to really wrap my head around the reason why, given that it didn't seem like that was a reason that had happened before. And, crazy enough, they do make medication to help you with flying. And, they'd said that my concern was like, oh, if you're afraid to fly, then I'm concerned that you wouldn't be able to make it to the wedding. And they're like, oh, no, I'll definitely be there for the wedding. So then it was like, well, I don't understand why, you would not want to come for Christmas, but you could definitely come for my wedding. So anyway, that was that. And so one way that I could have addressed this, now, full disclosure, I didn't fully do this. I kind of maybe did half of it. So how, if I was using nonviolent communication, I would say something to the effect of, okay, so I see that the thought of you flying out causes you a lot of stress, and my husband and I do not want to add stress to your life. In fact, having you come out for Christmas, we were hoping for the opposite, so we would not want to hurt you in that way. The fact that you don't want to come out for Christmas makes us both feel sad. We were really looking forward to spending Christmas with you here. The need that I have, or what I'm really needing in this moment, is to know that you're going to be okay and have plans. You will be with people for Christmas, because I feel sad that you would be alone on another Christmas. Is there a way that we can arrange for you to be with people on Christmas Day? Whether that is we find family that's close by that can either drive to you, or that you could drive to them. How can we make arrangements to make sure that you are not alone? So that would be one way. If I'm going to be honest with you all, there's another way to go about this, also using the nonviolent communication. I noticed that you are letting me know that you are afraid to come fly out here for Christmas. And I feel confused, because you're also saying that you would fly out for my wedding, and I've seen that you have flown out before. I think I really need to understand more about what's really going on. It seems like there may be something else deeper going on with why you don't want to come out. Is there a way that we could talk about that and figure out what might else be going on with this. And it doesn't have to result in you flying out. I just really feel confused and really want to understand where you're coming from. So that's another way I could have handled it. I didn't do either. I just got angry. I got angry because I felt like I was being lied to. Okay, so that is one situation. Then there was another time where I was on like a group phone call, like Zoom call with some friends. And it was a couple hours long that we usually get together and we all chat, and there's like 5 or 6 of us usually. So, there's a lot of people, and sometimes some people have a lot more going on and they want to talk, and then sometimes there's folks that don't have a lot going on and they don't need to talk much. But on this one particular time, some of the ladies were talking, and I had some feedback that I wanted to give, and they were like saying stuff like, oh, like kind of saying that they needed some guidance or assistance in like a therapeutic or mental health way. And so I was like, oh, that's an invitation for me, since I'm the only therapist in the group. And so I tried to chime in a couple of times, and nobody heard me, because I think with Zoom, if multiple people are talking at once, somebody's voice that's trying to speak is just completely like gone. Anyway, I did that several times, and I even tried to wait for there to be silent so people could actually hear me. And I want to say like 5 or 6 times, and like nothing. I like could not get my voice through, and it made me angry, and I was getting more and more angry. And some people were talking, and I just was like, I'm so fucking pissed, right? I was just angry. So I hung up the call. I was like, I'm leaving. I gotta go, right? Because I just was so angry that I couldn't even talk. Because I was even close to the end of it. I was going to speak out and say, hey, I don't feel like I'm being heard right now. But even when I tried that, I couldn't be heard. So I was like, fuck, man. So anyway, so I took some time. I vented to my husband because he was like, hey, how did it go? And I was like, I'm angry, I'm pissed. A couple of friends had noticed on the call that like something was up. And so I just briefly told them, like, I just felt like I wasn't being heard by anyone, and it was making me angry. And then I decided that I needed to cool off. I needed to do some things to help me like calm down and relax from the anger. Because for me, like not being physically heard is a huge fucking trigger for me to get angry, like huge. So that was a big one for me. And so I waited until the next morning, and then I wrote to the group to explain where I was coming from and why I probably looked pissed off. And then I left the call a few minutes early. And so what I said to them was that I understood that, some folks had bigger things going on and needed some extra support, and that as I tried to speak up, at least on 5 or 6 occasions, that nobody could hear me, I understood that may not have been a result of people actively ignoring me, that it could have been technical issues, even though I was like, my microphone was on, but that it could have been that when I tried to speak, somebody else spoke at the exact same time, and it prevented my voice from being heard. So I acknowledged that even though I felt unheard, it didn't seem to me like it was done purposefully. So I said that I was angry last night, that I felt so unheard, and luckily these ladies know that that's one of the things that I'm trying to work with. So I stated the need, like I need to have space for me to be able to talk, for there to be enough of a lull in the conversation that other voices can be heard, and that, that there's some fairness to the conversations. And granted, this rarely ever happens in our conversations, and I think it was more a circumstance than it was anything, but it brought up so much anger, and I was like, well, I have to address it. I mean, this is a group of women trying to support each other on our spiritual growth, and this is my spiritual growth, is I need to be able to speak my mind and do it in a productive and healthy way. And so I needed to request my action. And I said, I don't know how to fix this in the future, and it may just be a one-time situation, but I'm wondering if anyone has ideas. And so somebody was like, hey, I totally get it. Like a lot of them were like apologetic that they were, talking so much in that time span. And somebody was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. A lot of them didn't realize I was trying to talk. And so we kind of came up with like, next time just type in the chat, like, can y'all even hear me? Like just even fun or like silly or what have you. And so that could have cued the ladies in that like, hey, I keep trying to speak up and nobody can hear me. And so it's like, yeah, shit, why didn't I think of that? And sometimes it's because after the second or third time, my anger was starting to boil in my blood. And so when that happens, often your brain shuts down in its important areas to sort of problem solve these things, to say, oh, I could just type. And then there gets to be a time where you're just so angry that you're like, fuck this, I'm not typing it. If they can't hear me, fuck them, right? So that's not productive. And I didn't say that. And but I did finally have my voice heard. And so it was very healing for me to have them all hear me and apologize for not hearing me the night before. And then we came up with a solution to that problem. And so that was a beautiful way for us to work through that, because it was a whole group thing. There was a time recently too where I got into it with another group that was a group of like-minded people that had a similar goal, spiritual goal. And it was really disheartening that this group was made to support one another to achieve goals in growing a spiritual business of some sort. We all came in with different areas of interest. We all came in with like on the cusp of starting something new in the spiritual realm, not really knowing what to do. And so we had a group of women that have already done that. They were already, in that spiritual leadership role, were going to sort of mentor us and help us through this. And, it ended up being more of a situation where the women that were trying to develop their spiritual business helped each other more with one another than the people that were trying to lead it. And we felt very ignored as a group, unsupported as a group. And so we tried to address it in a healthy way. And actually one of the participants, who's like the nonviolent communication guru, had drafted like a letter to express what our needs were and how we would like to have those met. And she used this method perfectly. And some of us were like, oh, that's so nice. I think we're a little bit more angry than that. And she's like, yeah, but that's not how you address things. You know what I mean? And so we sent it, and it wasn't well received. In fact, we were made to feel as if we were asking for too much. And it catapulted so much anger. And it made a bad situation toxic very quickly. We all thought like, oh no, this group can survive this. That's the whole point of being with spiritual leaders, is like, we will work through this as a group and come and be better. And it ended up doing the complete opposite. And we realized, oh, I think we might be more mature than the people that are more successful than us. And it was really disappointing. And so we got on a call to sort of express, what our concerns were and why this letter was produced. And at one point, each person got to sort of express their feelings and their needs, and it was done so beautifully and nicely. And then the leaders came on and they got angry as if they were the victims of this incredibly nice letter, just saying, hey, we would like some additional support, and this is how we would like it. We're open to suggestions and working through it. And like, I'm serious, there was no wrong thing done. And thank God she wrote it so beautifully, because we could be like, no, like legit, there was no reason for this. So anyway, in this call, they started to they cut people off. Like the entire group of us were supposed to all speak. We thought that they would come on and like address it, and the way that they handled it, maybe apologize for getting angry at us and for even sending them this letter. And that didn't happen. And then like half of us, or more than half of us, had spoken, and then they cut the rest of us off, and then they began to express their concerns, and it was like they hadn't heard a word all of us had just said. And so I actually had typed into the chat like, hey, can the rest of us finish before you guys say your piece? And I was like boiling inside at this point, because it was a victim role. Like they were the victims of us requesting more support, more than what they were giving, which it had slowed down dramatically from like the first month or two that we were together. There was a lot of support, a lot of encouragement, a lot of trainings and education, and then it fell off. And we were like, we would like to kind of go back to the way that it was, and these are some ideas, and what do you all think? And so anyway, so then they were kind of, it seemed to all of us that all of a sudden they were the victims of us, and that we were being mean and nasty and asking for too much from them. And so I got very angry, because one, it hurt me, and two, I had heard from all of my friends up to this point how much this process was hurting them, and for them to be kind of ignored, and everything that they had said eloquently was done, and they just still couldn't listen to what we were saying and what we were asking for. And none of us thought that we would be like, everything would explode. We thought, oh, okay, this will just take us to the next level and give us what we really need. And anyway, so they're like, sure. And then they let me talk, which probably was a mistake that they soon regretted when I had my meltdown. But sometimes I kind of go into autopilot and speak my mind, especially when I'm upset. And I thought that I was being mean and nasty by what I had to say, but the girls that were on the call said that it was beautifully said, and it showed the passion and the hurt that I had. And very similarly to the 4 pillars in nonviolent communication, I just expressed how I was feeling, that I was feeling abandoned, that I had made numerous requests like to have my voice heard, and it was continuously put down, and that there were specialties that I had that were ignored, that there were women that were in this group that taught me more than the 2 leaders had taught us, and that I was upset by all of this, and I felt that it wasn't fair and it wasn't right. And sadly, that group dismantled, and we had really good potential that I'm very sad that didn't get to work out. But like I said before, there are times where we can do this all perfectly right and say it beautifully, and if people don't want to meet you there, because the letter was, and I'm not going to say that the way that I was angry was perfect, or that should have produced them to wake up and go, oh shit, we took this all wrong, let's re-talk about this. No, I'm not saying that, but the letter was perfect. And so when our colleague had made that beautiful nonviolent communication letter, and it was received with anger and hurt that we could dare ask for more, that's when you know, okay, well, we actually did what we needed to do in that moment to ask for more help. And then you can walk away and say, okay, I did what I could. And it's a bummer. It's really sad. But yes, you can use nonviolent communication. You can address your anger in a healthy way. And not everyone is still going to just appreciate that. And all of a sudden everything's going to be la-di-da. It's not always the case. But the point is that you try. And more times than not, it will work in your favor. So have faith in that. Keep trying. If you feel like you legitimately have anger completely blocked off, or if anger is something that you feel out of control with, that gets the best of you or takes over yourself, then I do ask you to reach out for some help. There are plenty of people out there that can help you work through that and get in touch with your anger in a healthier way. Remember, anger is our friend. And remember that right now, more than ever, we need to find better ways to talk to one another and to love one another. We do not have to like each other, but we do need to show each other love and respect. So with that, I will say adieu. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. It really means the world to me. And if you find this information and content useful, please go rate and review the podcast and share it with anyone that you think might also benefit from this content. On Instagram, my handle is theintuitivepsychologist111, all underscore. And on there you will see I've got inspirational messages to share. And on Wednesdays at 1:30 Pacific Standard Time, I will go on and either do a live guided meditation or present a specific topic ahead of time. You can submit your questions and I will answer them live along with any questions that you have on the live chat. So that's been a really fun place to get a lot of interaction from my listeners and followers. If you've got any questions, comments, concerns, topic ideas, guests you'd like to return, please feel free to email me. My email is intuitive.psych.111@gmail.com. So that is intuitive.psych, which is spelled psych.111@gmail.com. If you're looking to work with me and you would like to have some assistance during the early stages of a spiritual awakening or any sort of early stages of coming into your spirituality, please feel free to look at my website. My website is intuitivepsych.com, intuitivepsych.com, and you can book a free 30-minute consultation to let me know what you're looking for and make sure that I am the best person to help you out. If you're in California and you're looking for spiritual therapy, feel free to also email me at the same email, intuitive.psych.111@gmail.com. And again, you will get a free 30-minute consultation to see if your mental health needs and my services are a good fit. So, again, thank you all so much for your support, your interactions, and just moving the conversation forward and continuing to give back in any way that you can. Not just for me, but just for everybody out there. Don't forget, folks, you are the light.